It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
Buongiorno tutti. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Phil Ferguson Show. I am so delighted that you could join us today. We have a lot in the show. I'm going to talk about a brand new magical ETF that's going to pay out 7% per year. We're going to talk about investor underperformance and one of the reasons it happens and maybe why having an advisor can help you avoid some of that. We're going to talk with my good friend Lauren about Planned Parenthood and what it does and how you can help. And then at the very end of the show, I'm going to give you an update, I guess the final update, because it's now October, on our little collective group fundraising project for the Secular Student Alliance. And I think you're going to love that little update report. We've got a lot of stuff in the show, so I'm going to keep the little banter here short and just get into it because I have two, count them, two different investing skeptically segments. The 7% payout's kind of a follow-up on something that I've talked about recently, so I had to just slip this in here. And I do hope you enjoy the show. And so we're going to have a little bit of music here, and we'll go right into the segments. Sometimes I wonder if the internet or Google or Facebook or somebody is using my phone to listen to me, or maybe they just listen to the show. After recently talking about funds that pay out steady dividends, or not steady dividends, steady payouts, I got an ad and I went and checked it out for a brand new steady distribution payout ETF. It's brand new. And of course, since I'm an old school investor, brand new scares me, just like Bitcoin. I want something to prove that it has value before I would ever think about giving it money. So it's already in trouble to start with. The next thing is, even though it's clearly articulated in the documents that I was able to get, when a fund or an ETF tells you it's going to pay you out 7%, some people may not make the connection that the fund may not go up 7%. It might go up 3 or 4%. So if it pays you 7%, it's paying you back part of your original money. So based on this logic, I could make an 8% payout fund or a 10% payout fund or a 20% payout fund. It just might dissolve in 5 years or less if the portfolio goes down. But it could pay out these rates. And so someone getting a 7% payout, if the fund doesn't make money or loses money, they can eventually go broke. And that's one of the things that I definitely want to avoid in retirement, going broke. Doesn't sound sexy to me. So I thought, let's see how this works. And it's funny because I did eventually Google and find some documents on this. This fund has not even been up for 6 months. It's only been around for... Well, I guess this was dated. This is from June 30th. It started in January of 18, so it's been almost 9 months now. And according to this sheet, year to date, it's down 1.6%. So while the market has been up nicely, nothing crazy, all the gyrations that they're doing, they've managed to lose money. So if they lose 1% and pay you out 7%, that means it went down 8%. Because they have to pull that money from somewhere. If that continues, in 10 to 12 years, you will be broke. So just keep that in mind. But I also found Investors Business Daily website. And the problem with websites nowadays, you have no idea who they are, what they represent. But they have a article, and it's called New ETF Aims to Provide a Steady Rate 7% Annual Distribution Rate. That's my error. I didn't read that right. And it doesn't say rate twice, but new ETF aims to provide a steady 7% annual distribution rate. Well, that's great. And you think, oh, good. There's a little bit of research here, some journalism. No, it's just a fucking marketing piece. So someone paid to have this in their website. That's what it looks like to me. I don't know for a fact. And so they get into some of the details, I guess, kind of, sort of details. And this ETF, it's okay because it's backed by indexes. So everyone has to use the word index now because that's the big word everybody's looking for. So it has 2 indexes and it invests in them in a 50-50 ratio. By the way, this thing is called the NASDAQ 7 Handle Index. HANDL. I'm assuming that stands for something, but I have no idea what it is. It's from a company called Strategy Shares. And again, to me, so far, it looks like a marketing gimmick, but maybe I'm mistaken. So it has 2 different indexes, 50-50. It invests in these 2 indexes. The first is the Dorsey Wright Explore Portfolio. I have no idea what that is. And then the other 50% is in the Core Portfolio. So one has a very particular specific name, and the other one is about as generic as humanly possible. So let's look. They have the details here. The Dorsey Wright Explore Portfolio is a tactical allocate. Okay, tactical. You lost me at tactical. I'm done. But I'm going to go on just for the amusement's sake. But tactical to me is an investment philosophy that has been proven to not work. But okay, let's continue. Tactical allocation index of high levels of current income. It holds 12 different ETFs. So they are going to hop in and hop out and jump in and jump out of 12 ETFs that may be index funds. And I'm not even sure exactly if that's the case. But assuming that they were, as soon as you start rapid cycling, jumping in and out of different index funds, you're no longer really an index fund because the whole idea is to buy and hold. So the idea of a tactical index fund is ludicrous. You're distorting, I'll be nice, distorting the definitions of these words. The 12 that they have here are growth and income equities, dividend equities, utility stocks. Okay, those sound like nice things. You could just get a nice stock index fund and not screw with this. Master limited partnerships. I have talked about those before. Bad juju. Don't have those. Preferred dividend stocks. Okay, just preferred stocks, I think. Not a big fan of those either. Real estate investment trusts. Okay. Covered calls. What? Active fixed income. I don't know what that is. High yield bonds. Okay. Fine. Intermediate term corporate bonds. Mortgage-backed securities, and Build America bonds, taxable muni bonds. Great. Taxable muni bond, that also kind of like is an acronym for me because why even have muni bonds if they're going to be taxable? Why not just get government bonds, U.S. government bonds? The core portfolio, which is the other 50%, provides long-term exposure, and it's 70% bonds and 30% stocks. So it holds 3 least expensive aggregate bond ETFs. And so it's 70% bonds. The other stuff is meant to create dividends. I can't fathom how this is possibly going to generate close to 7%. The high risk, high yield bonds and some of the other things, and maybe master limited partnerships have high payouts, but they tend to have negative growth. So those are also problems kind of baked into this thing. And of course, on top of all that, the expense ratio is 0.96%. So you're going to pay them 1% for jumping around and doing this, and it's going to pay out 7%. And they're very excited about it. This article was very excited about it. Let's give it a few years. I'm going to predict, I'm not going to go out too much on a ledge here, but I'm going to predict that this fund is going to go down. It is going to decrease in value year after year after year. And at some point, people are going to find out that the 7% they've been getting is mostly their own money back. Not all. This fund could make 2 or 3 or 4% per year, But if it's paying out 7 and they don't make 7, they're handing you part of your money back. And we're going to have a lot of upset people with this thing here. What is this called again? The NASDAQ 7-handle index ETF. So there you have it.
I've always been an atheist. I simply, as time went on, I became more interested in American intellectual history, and I felt that the secular side of our history was very much underrepresented in readable, popular history books. So that's how I got into it. I am not an atheist propagandist in that I'm not interested in converting people to atheism. What I'm interested in is talking about what the secular side of our history has meant to the development of the United States.
And what has the secular side of the development of our history meant for the development of the United States?
Well, it's something that's not talked about much because we've got all these people going blah, blah, blah about how this was founded as a Christian nation. But it wasn't founded as a Christian nation, although we were overwhelmingly a majority Christian people at the time the Constitution was written. But what did the founders do in the Constitution? They made a break with all previous documents, including the state constitutions at the time after the Revolution, and they didn't mention God. They didn't say that governmental power flows from God. They said, we the people. The word God does not appear in the Constitution at all, which always astonishes my college audiences when I tell them that, which tells you how badly American history is taught. In fact, what's generally taught about the origins of the United States is everybody who came here for religious liberty, which is true. But initially, before we became the United States and were colonial America, the people who came here for religious liberty came here for religious liberty for themselves, not for anybody else. So the first thing the Puritans did in Massachusetts was try to get rid of everybody who didn't agree with them. However, the founders had a very different view, which is because there were already people of so many different faiths here, we needed to have no state faith. So they just left it out altogether of the Constitution. The First Amendment was made specifically to protect religion from government. The Constitution itself, which leaves God out, was meant to protect government from religion. The two go together.
Today's Investing Skeptically segment, I guess I'm going to call it Investor Underperformance. And it's one of the many things that I think provides value for an advisor. And so I'm going to talk about this a little bit. And I'm going to refer to a document from Vanguard. Vanguard occasionally puts out white papers where they pick a topic and go over that and try to provide some data to support their position. This document happens to be from June of 2016, so it's a little old, but I think the logic still applies. And it's called Vanguard Advisors Alpha. And so usually when they talk about alpha, it's a measurement of your return versus some other static state. So the intent of this is to explain how an advisor can provide value to the clients. And it's got several different things that it talks about. But today I'm going to focus on this one topic of investor underperformance in relationship to mutual funds. I'm going to focus on that specifically. And it starts on page 4, I think, of this document, 4, 5, and 6. It's actually 11 pages in total, but I'm just going to focus on this section. And they were able to get this data from Morningstar, morningstar.com. You've heard me talk about that before. And what Morningstar did was they took all U.S. stock-based mutual funds, managed funds, and passive funds, also known as index funds, and they broke them down into 9 categories, which is a very Vanguard kind of thing. And think of a tic-tac-toe board, where you can put your X's and O's, and you have value, blend, and growth. And blend means it's somewhere between value and growth. It's not all value stocks. It's not all growth stocks. It's a blend of value and growth. And in the other dimension, you have large cap, mid cap, and small cap. So you end up with 3 factors on one axis and 3 factors on the other, and you end up with 9 individual cells, or 9 different, cells. Yeah, 9 different squares. And they calculated the average performance of funds that fit best into any one of these 9 boxes. And this is for the 10 years ending December 31st of 2015. So it's a couple of years old, but it's nice because it includes the 07, 08, 09 trouble, recession, market correction, whatever you want to call it, and the good years before it, and a couple good years after it. So it's a nice mix. And these funds, for example, large cap value, the average fund had 5.59% return per year. And the results range from 5.59, which happens to be the lowest one, to large cap growth, which is 7.33. So each one of these 9 cells, it shows you what the return is. And then in each one of these cells, it also shows, as calculated by Morningstar, what investors actually made in relationship to what the funds made. So let me give you some numbers and let me walk you through it. So the best case scenario, it looks like large cap blend, the funds returned on average 6.44. Now keep in mind, this is the average mutual fund, not the better performing, according to data and history, in my opinion, index funds. They're probably a subset of these funds, but the average large cap blend returned 6.44% per year. But the average individual investor only made 5.06% per year, or an underperformance of minus 1.38%. The most dramatic difference is in mid-cap value funds. And in that little section, the average fund returned 6.59, and the average investor only returned 4.3, or a loss of 2.29% per year. And so now the question is, well, how does that happen? So here's the problem. When you look at a mutual fund and its numbers and its performance, that's assuming a static state, an investment of $10,000 that stayed in the whole time. It doesn't account for money flowing in and money flowing out. So what Morningstar did was they took all of these funds and looked at the net inflows or outflows of money month by month for an entire 10-year time period. And this number is reported to them from all the mutual fund companies, or it's publicly available. And they collect this information, and so they know that money's coming in and out. And the problem that the average investor has is a really bad habit of taking money out when things are bad and adding money in when things are really good. And that may not sound like that's a bad thing, but let me give you an example in the real world. And I've mentioned this before, and it's a nice example. You go into a department store, let's say, I think they still exist, and you see a sweater for $100. It's a very nice sweater, and you think to yourself, I don't know if I want to buy that. It's $100. So you say, I'll think about it and I'll come back. You come back a year later, and you see that same sweater, and now it's $200, so of course you buy it. No, we generally don't think that way when we're buying tangible things like a sweater or a car. If the price doubles, we don't get excited and want to be more likely to buy it. However, with stocks, humans behave differently because there's investments and they went up in value and everyone wants to ride a winner. So if a stock has gone up a lot or a fund has gone up a lot, you want to get it. And it's something that occasionally I actually have clients or prospective clients ask me this, where they will show me a different portfolio created by a different advisor that happens to have more of the winners from the last year or two than I might assign to a portfolio, because I am trying to build a portfolio that is based on long-term norms, trends, statistical analysis, and maybe even sometimes putting a bias and adding more money to things that have underperformed. That's a slightly contrarian idea, and it goes back to the mathematical concept of regression to the mean. But the average investor has a bad habit of putting money in when times are good and funds are going up, which means they're often putting money in after it went up, and they take money after it has gone down. So as an example, in 2006 and 2007, the net inflows into stock-based mutual funds was $400 billion. Billions and billions. Carl Sagan. Billions with the B. $400 billion were added into stock-based mutual funds, U.S. stock-based mutual funds, in calendar year 2006 and 2007. Wonderful inflows of money, lots of money coming in. Well, it turns out that that was right before the big drop. So from 2008 to 2012, the net inflow is actually a net outflow of $56 billion. So after the stocks have hit bottom, for the next several years, people are pulling money out in record amounts. So from 2009 through 2012, people are pulling out money. And just for reference, 2009, the S&P 500 went up over 26%. In 10, it went up 15%. In 11, it went up only 2. These are including dividends. And in 12, it went up 16%. And in 13, which was not included in this data set, the market happened to go up over 32%. So several years in a row of really good returns. 1 year was only 2%. The money is not going into mutual funds. It's leaving stock-based mutual funds. So people are pulling out while the market is going up. Once it's gone up for several years, people tend to start adding money, and they add that money, and then sometimes the market goes down and people pull money out again. So they're constantly pulling money out at the wrong time. And this has resulted in these variations of performance where the fund is doing well technically as it's published in the prospectus and on Morningstar and other documents that show the actual returns of the fund, but the individual investor is not achieving those results because they're adding or selling at the wrong times from within that fund. So one of the things that the advisor can do for you is create a plan and help you stick to the plan. You don't add money to what's winning the most. Maybe, at least this is something I try to encourage, is I will add money to what's underperforming. So it creates a lifetime situation where you're buying low and selling high, which tends to be the opposite of what the average person does, or at least what a generous portion of the population tends to do. Enough people do it the wrong way. So the advisor can help you overcome a lot of that variation and collect all of the money that those funds are making. And like I said, here the difference is anywhere between 1.38 and 2.29 or 2.3%. So 1.4 to 2.3% is what you can expect to make if you rigorously invest and stay the course. Now, of course, you can do that on your own, but not everybody can or wants to do that. And that's why this data reflects that underperformance. So this is one of the things that the advisor can help you do is make sure that you get a plan, stick with the plan. And in kind of a weird way, I often tell people that one of my most important jobs is to take you out of your investments. And it sounds kind of weird, but work with me here for a minute. I want to take at least your emotion out of your investments. Funny thing is, for myself, when I first started doing this 20 plus years ago, I would often give advice to my clients and then sometimes not follow it, not follow it myself because I knew better. I was giving really sound advice, I hope, and then I would ignore some of it because I knew better. Well, I would make some mistakes. And I noticed that I was actually underperforming the really lame and boring stay the course advice that I was giving to my clients. And so what I decided to do at some point, and now I'm making much better returns for myself, is I follow my own fucking advice. I treat my account just like any other one of my clients' accounts. From time to time, I build it. I look at how much cash is there. I look at what the percentages are. and I look at what has changed or not changed, and I make adjustments as if it wasn't my money. And I think that's the big way you separate the personal and the emotional thing from the actual statistic and statistical analysis. Because what is the market going to do in the next few weeks or few months or even a year or two? I have no idea. I genuinely, truly have no idea. And the data has shown that no one else has any idea either. Can you find people that predicted the market crash in 2008? Of course you can. How many crashes did they predict? Did they predict the crash right before the market went up 30% and then down 37%? So they only gained 7%? Or did they have it at the right time? It is notoriously hard to do. It can happen from time to time, but the vast majority of people, even professional investors, don't know in advance that the market's going to go up or that the market's going to go down. And the average individual investor tends to add money when things are hot and take out money when things are bad or a little scary. And I still get the stories of people who, after the market dropped 37, 40% or more, depending on the time frame that you pick, back in 7 and 8, took their money out and never put it back in. And they're still sitting in cash. Well, from the bottom of 08 until now, the markets have gone up 300%. And now they're scared to put money in because you're looking at year to year. In stock market investing, there is no try, there is only do. You either invest in stocks for the long run, because then the markets become relatively predictable. 10 years is good, 15 is better, 25 is even better. And unless you happen to know that your life expectancy is much shorter for some reason, you're a long-term investor. Even at retirement, at 65, say, you should have a reasonable expectation that you're going to live 20, 30, or more years. You're a long-term investor. Even if you are not a long-term investor, if you intend to leave this money to a spouse or to a charity or to your children or grandchildren, then they become long-term investors, and you should still think of it that way. So you need to ignore the short-term fluctuations, and looking at a portfolio that's recommended to you that shows what you could have made based on the last year, you're forgetting that the advisor has the luxury of picking the winners after the history has been completed. I once had someone come to me with a proposal that the advisor had given me, and they said, well, Phil, you are suggesting the funds that you're picking show that I would have made, let's say, 7.5% last year, and the funds that they picked made 10.5% last year. Can you do better than 10.5%? And I said, well, that's comically easy. Of course I can. I can build this database that I have access to and find 40,000 different mutual funds, and I can pick only the ones that won last year. And I put them in your portfolio. And so instead of showing 7.5 or 10.5, I can show you 18.5% in the last 12 months. Great. What does that mean going forward? If anything, really good performing funds have a bad habit of underperforming in the future. That's a whole other topic for another segment. Just wanted to go over this again. It's a Vanguard white paper. It is called Vanguard Advisors Alpha. If you want to read the whole thing, you can probably just Google that. It's from June of 2016. It's available to the public. And my focus was on page 4, 5, and 6 in how a an organized plan, a logical, reasonable plan that you are kind of taken out of and the advisor controls and make sure that you stay in all the time. And hopefully one of the things that I add is adding money to the underperformers and maybe skimming off some of the profits of the really big performers. Hopefully all that works out, that you at least get what the funds are returning, and hopefully a little bit better because you have index funds, and maybe even a little bit better than that. But the whole idea is that you're doing better than you would on your own. So we're going to wrap that segment up, and we'll go to our interview. All right, everybody, welcome back. We're going to have some extra fun today. We are going to talk about all kinds of things, including Planned Parenthood, with Lauren Blauvelt-Copelin. Did I do it okay?
Yeah.
Yay. It's always important for me to get names right, and yours is a little longer, not too crazy complicated. And what is your official title with Planned Parenthood?
Hi, Phil. Thanks so much for having me. I am right now the campaign director for Planned Parenthood Votes Ohio. I work in the public affairs department for Planned Parenthood of Greater Ohio and Planned Parenthood Advocates of Ohio. But because I do a large amount of political work, it's important that we have the distinction that, I'm working for a separate entity, Planned Parenthood Votes Ohio, our super PAC.
Just to be clear, you're not speaking on behalf of Planned Parenthood, the company, nationally. You're speaking on
Correct.
behalf of Planned Parenthood Votes of Ohio. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And we can talk about Planned Parenthood in general, of course, but I'm speaking for Planned Parenthood out of the state of Ohio.
Yeah, it's important to make those distinctions. And if you ever get to the point where you want to say something personal and you're not even representing Ohio, just let me know. I've occasionally had people on who are in the military, and they have to make a real big distinction that they are not speaking on behalf of the military. So,
absolutely, yeah. This is Lauren Blauvelt.
Fantastic. Well, before we get into political and Planned Parenthood-y kind of stuff, I want to talk a little about you. We met with this whole Ark Park theme park thing. What is your involvement with that?
Absolutely. In my free time, as we like to joke about it, I volunteer with the Tri-State Freethinkers, a very well-organized group out of Kentucky. They also cover Ohio, and they invited me to speak as a speaker on behalf of Planned Parenthood a few years back, and I started volunteering with them. And one of the things I do is I speak at our annual protest against the Ark that's in northern Kentucky. It's kind of an embarrassment that's so close to those of us living in the tri-state area. And, just talking about the wasted taxpayer dollars that goes towards what should be a private space.
Right.
Not that I don't think any of us think that it should even be there, but it definitely shouldn't have taxpayer dollars, and they definitely shouldn't be able to use a nonprofit status to discriminate against their employees. So that's, I get involved there, but that is how we've met.
Well, I don't mind it being there, actually. I at some point imagine it's going to be converted into condos. But the trick, of course, will be adding more than just the one current window, because you don't want to have a whole bunch of people living in a place with one window that's 2 foot by 2 foot or whatever the official size from the Bible is.
I don't know. They say it's possible.
Well, God's will, anything is possible. So I take it you wouldn't consider yourself a Christian?
I am an atheist. That's how I identify out loud and proud, I guess. And of course, I work with many people of different faiths, but that's how I identify. And
yeah, it was funny. Just recently, I was at a meeting that has nothing to do with secularism, humanism, atheism, whatever, and I had on one of those little red A pins on my lapel. Mm-hmm. And someone said, "Is that for the?" It's a baseball reference for the A's. Is that a team? A's? And I said, no, it's for atheism. And they just stopped because they had no idea how to handle that. They didn't know what to say. So I was just representing. Did you grow up? Did you grow up in a secular family, or was the family religious?
My family is religious, for the most part, very religious. I grew up Methodist. I went to church every Sunday. I participated in church choir. I choreographed church musicals. I was in chimes, all of the youth groups, all of the summer camps, all the Bible schools. And I would say at least some of my family members are still definitely practicing. I would say we're not as a family as religious as we were in our upbringing, but I don't know if I should out my sister, but I'm definitely an atheist.
Yeah, well, I won't tell anybody, and no one's listening anyway.
Right.
It's funny you said Methodist. I didn't know this, but I grew up, well, until I was 13, as Methodist, and I have run into a lot of self-proclaimed Christians in the United States that Methodists don't really count for them. That's not real Christians.
I don't know what to say about that. We are methodical. I still say we. They are methodical, and they're very service-based, but I mean, absolutely a Christian.
Yeah.
And also, I grew up in Appalachia, Southeast Ohio, and went to church in West Virginia. So I think there's also a lot of geography. So maybe some of the more progressive Methodist churches are represented on maybe the coasts and the big cities, not so much in the smaller communities like I was raised in.
I could see that because I know one of the things that helped my wife out is that she went to a Lutheran church in Arkansas, which was very different than the Lutheran church in Illinois. And it was almost like being Southern Baptist. You been to this ARC protest a couple of times, consider yourself an atheist. Now, for the job, just to be clear, this is, you said, an advocacy organization? So it's designed for political stuff? So
Planned Parenthood, and in the way that most folks know of Planned Parenthood, we are a large healthcare provider. We serve 1 in 5 women in the United States will go to a Planned Parenthood in her lifetime. And we also provide comprehensive sex education. All of this important health care and education work has become, over the years, very politicized, with attacks on funding going to reproductive health care, attacks on having sex education in schools, and definitely the most attacks around access to safe and legal abortion. So from that, Planned Parenthood over the years has become more and more of an advocacy organization as well, including having action funds that are completely separate, so none of the same funding, but separate organizations that support the services provided by our affiliates. So the work that I do in public affairs covers both our political cycles, so we're gearing up, it's September, so we're doing a ton of work already in the midterm for 2018, but we also do lobbying work with legislators full-time. Here in Ohio, we have a year-round, 2-year legislative cycle, so a lot of policy work, again, all to support the healthcare services, but it's a pretty active part of the group. And, we do advocacy with volunteers, a lot of activism. You'll see us out at rallies and phone banking and calling legislators, canvassing for elected officials. We do a lot of advocacy work that is necessary to advance reproductive health care and access to all of our services.
Yeah, it's hard for me to even comprehend that this is necessary, but here we are. Are you guys aligned with one political party, or is it topic-based? Is it when someone wants to, I guess, prevent women from getting health care? That's kind of where you stand?
Yes, we are completely issue-based. We want to support candidates who are completely for reproductive rights and health and freedom. And we do track how elected officials vote, certainly where they stand on the issues, especially access for abortion. There, time to time, this being one of them, one party is more supportive of us, and therefore we're more supportive of their candidates. But each endorsement is individually based on the person and their support for our issues.
Of course. Now, there's some misconceptions, I think, with Planned Parenthood and the organization on the national level, as best as you know it. Again, not speaking on their behalf per se, but I've heard people say something like 90% of everything they do is abortions.
Well, 97% of all of our services are reproductive, preventative care. We do breast cancer screenings, cervical cancer screenings. We do a lot of STI testing and treatment, and a lot of pregnancy tests and birth control. We provide the full range of birth control, and it can take some time to find the right one for you. So that's majority of our services are around preventative health care and your regular annual checkups. And then we also provide abortion. Depending on the area and the state, on average, it's around 3% of our services are in providing abortion, which is an important part of your total reproductive health care, choices. And
another thing that I've heard is that it's for women only. Can men show up to Planned Parenthood and get services?
They absolutely can. And here in Ohio, about 14% of our patients self-identify as male.
All right, awesome. And in Champaign, at least, they used to for a while, they would give out condoms. Is that something that is common throughout multiple locations, or is that just a local thing that I experienced?
Oh, yeah. Giving out free condoms is super important. We do that at our health centers. We also attend many community events and festivals where we give out free condoms. And we try to give out free dental dams and internal condoms as well, which are also known as female condoms.
Yeah, fair enough. So in the political activities that you do, what is most often the activity you're engaged in?
We are very engaged in direct voter contact. So we want to be talking to voters who we have, through data and analytics, determined that they're most likely to be moved by Planned Parenthood's message. We are a trusted healthcare provider and community partner in the areas where we are talking with voters. And so, they want to know which candidate is going to represent them best and represent especially their healthcare issues. Healthcare is very important right now. How are we able to continue paying, for ourselves and our families? And reproductive health care with all of the attacks, it's very important that, as Planned Parenthood, we have conversations directly with voters about who we've endorsed and why, who's going to represent them well. And so we do door-to-door canvassing. We also send out mail. And we also have a really robust digital campaign right now. So we do digital ads on Facebook and YouTube, again, supporting the candidates that we've endorsed and talking about the issues that we know matter to so many here in Ohio. And I know there are other campaigns across the country that are doing the same.
Sure. One of the fun things I did when I was protesting the protesters is my intention was to annoy them to the point that they were driven away. I understand that I had an unfair advantage being in Champaign, Illinois, because it's extremely liberal and pretty much everyone there was okay with Planned Parenthood. So I eventually could wear them down and they would leave. And their numbers were, 5 or 8 or 10 people. One of the arguments I had was that if your objective is to have fewer abortions, I'm thinking that the services and the medical support and the contraceptive services that Planned Parenthood provides would be a really good system to help reduce unwanted pregnancies and therefore abortions. Does that sound like a reasonable thing for me to have said?
I definitely agree that access to reproductive health care, especially access to birth control, is really important for all young people and women, and really women and men throughout their lifetimes. I mean, reproductive health care, I think we focus sometimes on just when you're young, but everybody needs it. And it's super important also the education part. A lot of our young people and even adults, never have access to comprehensive sex education. They don't even know how to use condoms or birth control or what some of the risks are along with sex, and also the rewards. Certainly conversations around healthy relationships and consent. All of this goes into why reproductive health care and access to it is so important. It's hard to say what folks, without all that, we definitely shouldn't be trying to take away abortion. Abortion is still part of reproductive health care. Our goal is to make sure that all reproductive health procedures and such are accessible. So I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. It's all good. I'm just trying to make sure that I make some points and help you make points that in this specific case, that I think that the people who seem to want to defund or devalue or even close Planned Parenthood don't seem to realize that it actually works in their interest. If their goal is fewer abortions, Planned Parenthood is a huge factor in success in reducing the number of abortions, because people get education, and women and men have more education, more information, more services to control their life choices. And I think it's just an amazingly wonderful organization that, I don't know, has just been smeared by a small group of Americans. And it really bothers me.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's really the point, is that like our reproductive health lives are so important, and the campaign to devalue Planned Parenthood and other reproductive health care providers, because the laws that are passed, they affect Planned Parenthood a lot, and a lot of times they name us, but they also affect, private, independently owned abortion providers, as well as other reproductive health care providers. And, we are trying to provide more access and more education, and all of the restrictions that, come maybe specifically are talking about abortion, but they are restricting all of our personal health decisions.
Absolutely. Now, if my listeners, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm saying I think that there's also a point that the folks who are outside protesting, there's a reason why they keep protesting, even our health centers that don't provide abortion. I think they're also against birth control, and they're also against sex education. And we see that showing up in the legislators that they support and the laws that those legislators put forward. Even the Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh, said, called birth control abortion, pills. So to them, it's all very connected. So the fight to protect, safe and legal abortion is also the fight to protect reproductive health care.
Absolutely. And I think from a battle perspective that they are picking what they think is the easiest battle to win first. And that might be to make it hard for people to get abortions. And then once they're done with that, I don't see them stopping if abortions became nationally illegal, because the next step, as you just mentioned with Kavanaugh, would be you shouldn't have birth control. And it goes back to some of these biblical values. And I think, quite frankly, that women become closer to property instead of an equal human. But I don't know if you want to go down that path with your job, but I will. But I find that very troubling.
I will say, I think that equality, especially women's equality, but really gender equality, this is true for whether you identify as male or female or transgender, and if you're gay, straight, bi, all the LGBTQ plus, that, our reproductive health care, it starts, like you said, they're attacking abortion, but they're attacking our personal decisions, about who we have sex with, how we have sex, like who we love. Those healthcare, they're health and lives decisions, and it is absolutely tied to equality. And women saw more equality with access to abortion and access to birth control, and I think that this fight to take away that access is ultimately the fight to take away equality that we haven't even achieved yet.
Yeah, I'm with you. If listeners want to help, is there some place they can go to, either nationally or with your organization, to donate?
Absolutely. PlannedParenthood.org for the health centers, charitable organization, and then the Planned Parenthood Action Fund is national. We have Planned Parenthood Votes Ohio for our campaign for 2018, which is super important, and then Planned Parenthood Advocates of Ohio. But if you put in Planned Parenthood and put in your zip code, they'll put you next to the Planned Parenthood that is in your region. But definitely look for your local organizers and activists too, because we need a lot of volunteer support in addition to donations.
Excellent. Do some cities still have people that will help people walk from the street to the front door because there's protesters that you might need safe passage? Is that actually a thing?
Yes, we do have volunteer escorts. We have escorts in our Columbus Health Center, and different, like I said, different affiliates have different volunteer programs. Some have escorts and some do not, based on need and security reasons. But absolutely, for escorts who volunteer with us, it's hard and important work, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's something that blows my mind, and I the more I learn, the more I appreciate how wonderful the Champaign location had it, because they actually had a building on the entire block. They owned the entire block, and so their parking lot was, you could park in the lot on their property and walk to the door. And so the protesters had to be out on the street, and this parking lot was really big, so you could pull in from 3 different sides. So you'd have to really have like 100 people in 3 different locations to block all the entrances. And once you got into the parking lot, it would be illegal for the protesters to get between you and the front door. So never really became a problem for us locally. But again, that's one of those things that 97% of this is general health care, birth control services, STD testing, and we have people forming crowds to stop women and men from getting these services. Sometimes I don't know what kind of world I live in.
I know it's hard. I definitely the response for me is knocking on doors, talking to more voters, changing more people's minds, getting more people involved. The more of us who participate, the harder it will be for them to continue to pass the restrictive legislation, and the better opportunity we'll have to actually make better laws that improve the healthcare we have, expand access. That's really our goal, is to make sure that anyone who needs to have a cancer screening or an STI test, or to change their birth control, is able to, get in the same day and talk to a provider they trust. And then if, they find out that they have a pregnancy, that they're able to make that personal decision for themselves, and that no one is barred access based on where they live and who they are and, any other demographic.
Absolutely. Now, I know your time is limited and you have important work to go help protect Planned Parenthood and medical choices. Is there anything that we've not covered that you want to get in before we go back to our work?
Just vote. Voting is so important. Please vote for representatives that share your values. And, I ask, look into reproductive health care, definitely who's for reproductive health care and who's not. But voting is so important. And it's going to matter a lot this midterm. So in November 6th.
Great. Well, Lauren,
thank you so much.
No, thank you for your time.
I appreciate it, Phil.
And we'll, of course, probably see each other next year or in many years after, because the ARC won't go away.
Exactly. We'll have to keep protesting. Thank you.
All right, Lauren, have a great day.
You too.
So how do we justify, as it were, faith that science will give us the truth? It works. Planes fly, cars drive, computers compute.
It's an inductive argument.
If you base medicine on science, you cure people. If you base the design of planes on science, they fly. If you base the design of rockets on science, they reach the moon. It works, bitches.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
Well, of course, it's that time of the show where we wrap things up. And it looks like on iTunes, there's no new reviews. So Phil is very sad. If you like the show, something you can do is go give a 5-star review at iTunes or Stitcher. That's the only 2 places that I know. I did also find out that the show was not properly updating in Stitcher for a few weeks. That has now been fixed. There may be another 1 or 2 streams that have had a hiccup. Apparently, Spreaker, where the show is originally hosted, updated the RSS feed. It had nothing that I had to do with it. They changed the way the RSS feed works, and almost everybody caught that and updated the feed, and you still get everything. But A few people didn't. So hopefully that's all fixed for everybody. So if you can go leave a 5-star review on iTunes, I would appreciate it. The one other update I wanted to go over is the Secular Student Alliance. Regular listeners know that a few, months ago, I made a challenge that anyone that would go and donate monthly, sign up for automatic monthly deductions, I would take whatever they donated, extrapolate it out to 12 months, and then match up to $10,000 of that. Well, I've been really coy about the numbers because the problem was in the very first week, you fuckers capped it out. So the very first week, enough listeners from the show went and signed up monthly with large enough contributions that the $10,000 I was committed to. And I didn't want to say it's over because I said we would do this for 3 months. And I'm very delighted that we did because from time to time, reminding you, some more people signed up. So here are the numbers, the best numbers that I have just from earlier today from the Secular Student Alliance from Kevin Bowling, the executive director. At this time, there are 53 individual monthly donors contributing $1,668 per month. Of course, now I have to extrapolate that for the year. That's $20,016. I'm assuming his math is correct. I didn't double check this because it doesn't really matter to me. I'm out the $10,000, and I thank you for that. But it's $20,000 extra every single year that the Secular Student Alliance will have to help college students and a few high school students find friends, find connections, find a safe place where they can talk to other secular students, usually non-believers, but they don't have to be. And I think it's a huge, huge program and wonderful program that creates leaders of the future. Now, that's not all, though, because there's also 12 people that decided, I don't want to play this monthly thing, and they donated extra money for a total of almost $1,500. And I also know that this does not include, because I was contacted directly by another listener that said, hey, if Phil can give $10,000, I can give $10,000. And I confirm with the Secular Student Alliance that that donation was made and it was earmarked for another category, so it didn't count in these numbers. And I'm also going to meet in a couple of days a regular show listener that is going to send in an additional $1,000, which is not in this number. So if we include all of it, we have what's expected over a year of about $20,000. We have $1,500 here, plus another $1,000, $2,500, plus another $10,000. That's $1,250. So that's $32,000 that we're over, plus my $10,000. So between me and the most wonderful listeners, the most caring and giving listeners in the world, in a few short months, of course, extrapolated out for the year for the people that are giving monthly, the Secular Student Alliance is going to raise about $42,000. So thank you so much. I cannot even begin to imagine that I have this many wonderful listeners that are willing to donate some of their hard-earned money, and I appreciate it. So, of course, give yourselves all a pat on the back for doing that. And if you didn't play along with this donation, well, we'll come up with something a little later, earlier in the year in 2018. Did a $6,000 thing for American Atheists. I did this, which was $10,000 for the Secular Student Alliance. I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I'll come up with something. Might be smaller. Probably not going to be bigger. 10 grand's real money. I'm going to notice that. But thank you, everybody, for participating. Again, if you like the show, go give a 5-star review somewhere. Share the show with your friend. And if you have questions or show topic ideas, I'm always welcome to that. You can email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. And in a few weeks, I'm just going to skip a few shows. So forgive me. I'm going to the FFRF convention and the CFI SciCon convention. And in between, we're going to travel and see the West Coast a little bit. So for a couple of weeks, I think I'm not going to put out a show. Maybe I'll put out one more best of. If some people seem to like that. So if that doesn't bother you, maybe I'll do one of those. But I do thank you very much. And if you're at either one of those conventions, please feel free to come up and say hello. I look forward to meeting you. Until then, ciao.